I mean, I think there are two ways I can answer this. The first, when we were doing our anthologies and we were taking transcriptions of stories from the stage and putting them on the page, we noticed that people really switch tense a lot when they're talking. So they don't all talk in present tense or past tense. They jump in and out in one sentence. They might change tense twice, and so we were working with our editors and they kept saying, just put it all in one tense. And then when we did, we noticed that it really kind of flattened the story. It didn't feel alive in the same way that it did spoken. And so we just stayed with what we heard, how the tense worked when someone was telling it, and kept that true on the page. And it worked, but it was very, very kind of a little jolting for our editors and things at first, but just trying to adapt it to the page didn't quite work. And then I think the second way I can answer it is, when people read, it's different from how people listen. And so sometimes you really find that you have to unfold details in a very specific way so that your listener stays connected to you. And we found examples of that to really show in the book how you can do that, how you can stay connected to the listener, how you can answer the questions that might pop into a listener's mind. Because when you're reading, you can just reread a sentence, you can go back to get the context, but you just can't when you're listening. If they miss it the first time, it's gone. I think this question has many layers, I think, because everybody is different, but one of the things I see so often is people not thinking their story is important, or even that they don't have a story. And one of the things at the Moth that we really believe is that everyone has a story and that those stories are important. And, I think that often when you dig into a story with someone and you find stories that are important to them and they share them, they're surprised because the reaction is inevitably someone will say to them, will come up to them after they've shared the story and say, me too, I've had that experience too. And even if it's one person or 10 people, it's still impactful. And I think that it's in those moments that they realize that their story matters and that they should tell it, and often people just, I think they think other people are more interesting, and so rather than put themselves out there, they want to be observers. But it's part of the job is encouraging people to really take that space and tell their story. I think people think they have to be professional storytellers, or they have to be an actor, or they have to be some sort of public person or public speaker. And that is absolutely not the case. I've worked with people who've never gotten on a stage before, and people who are scientists who never tell stories about themselves. They're too busy telling the stories of the facts that they're finding or the things they're investigating, and they don't put their own personal experience into it. And when you invite them to do that, it's pretty remarkable to watch them kind of blossom and transform and realize that you don't need to be any one particular thing to tell your story. And yeah, it's pretty magical to see someone who's never been on stage before take the stage and feel what it feels like to be heard and listened to. It's pretty great. We share our stories every day. When you're at the grocery store waiting in line to pay and you start chatting with the person next to you, or you're out and about with your friends over dinner, we're telling stories all the time. And you can use stories in your community to share and make change and create change. And I do think in the book world, I often find it frustrating when I'm looking for a book and it's like the best sellers, as somehow those are the best books because they've sold the most copies. Whereas, like, how do you find the book that hasn't sold the most copies? That is an amazing gem of a story. And I feel like, that's the magic of storytelling, is that so there are so many stories, and they're funny and they're heartbreaking and they take you on a roller coaster of emotion. They're, you know, suspenseful, or I don't know. I feel like there's no exclusivity to it, you know, or shouldn't be. It's funny because I think with the Moth, we definitely have a point of view. I think the people that work at the Moth are very liberal in their, but we've always tried to bring stories from all people, as much as we can. Obviously, you know, there is within reason,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, and we've always tried not to be so political in the story. Like, let people experience people's life and walk in their proverbial shoes for a few minutes and hear a story from a transgender person, or from a parent of a transgender person, and like understand what that experience is like from a personal view, and with the hope that people will, not that we end on a soapbox and say you must do this, but to let the listener come to it on their own, to let the listener go, wow, this person is this is a human person who's going through these experiences, and let them come to it on their own rather than tell them what they need to think, you know. And I think that's kind of a powerful thing with storytelling, is kind of inviting people to just listen. And I think the empathy comes when you actually do that, you know. And in this time when the discourse is so divided and people are shutting each other down, making that space to just listen to each other feels more important now than ever. It's really incredible. You know, it's an incredible time to be doing this when people are so divided. So let's hope stories can help bridge that a little bit.